Welcome to History B, Lesson 2 for Term 2. Today we will be talking about historical context and where it fits into the structure of the in-class essay. Last week we discussed the structure of the essay. If you recall, the essay structure was simply as follows. You have an introduction, as you do in every essay. You write about the historical context. You define the issue, in this case, the issue we're looking at is the interaction of groups. You do 3 paragraphs on change, 2 paragraphs on continuity, and a conclusion. Today, we are going to look at the paragraph about historical context. So today we're talking about historical context. What is historical context? How do you choose an appropriate historical context for your in-class essay? And how you write about the historical context in your essay. Now, for the purposes of the in-class exam, you should be using the same historical context that you used for your first essay about the individual. So, for example, if your individual was Malcolm X, your historical context would be the American Civil Rights Movement of the 1960s. So the first question we look at is, what is historical context? And simply put, the historical context is the social, economic, cultural, and political situation of a certain place at a certain time. So it looks at things like, how do people live at this time? What are their beliefs at the time? Is it an agrarian economy or a farming economy, or is it an industrialized economy? Is the economy going well, or is the economy going badly? What is the political structure? Are they a democracy or a dictatorship or a monarchy? What are the relationships of people? What is the social situation? Are the people poor? Are there classes? Is there equality between people? Are some people better off than others? These are the sort of questions we look at when we discuss historical context. So we're going to look at an example of a society and its historical context. And we're going to look at a brief video of someone describing Russia before the 1917 revolution. While we watch, have a think about the political, social, and economic situation of Russia as described in the video, and have a think about what groups are mentioned in the video. Okay, so because you're looking at historical context changes over time. So what you have to do in the essay is pick some significant events that show that change from your start date to your end date of your essay. And you'll be looking at things like wars, revolutions, epidemics, depressions, economic depressions, and things like that. So you have to look at significant events within your time frame and look at significant groups that influenced those events or who were involved in those events. So if we look at this video about Russia after the revolution of 1917, have a think about the social, economic, and political situation after the revolution and how the historical context changed after the revolution. One obvious change is, of course, political. Before the revolution, Russia was an absolute monarchy. After the revolution, Russia was no longer a monarchy. You should also think about what groups are mentioned during this video. Okay, so what we've been looking at today is historical context. We looked at what historical context is and what you have to do in terms of the essay about historical context. The first step for you is to choose a time period that you are going to write about in your essay. For the first paragraph after the introduction in the essay, you have to look at the social, economic, and political situation at the beginning of the time period. And that's what you write about in the first paragraph after the introduction. But for the purposes of the whole essay, you should look at the same issues at the end of the time period you've chosen and look at some significant events that cause the changes and identify some groups that were involved in those events. So that will lead you towards looking at change and continuity in the rest of your essay. So your task for next week is to actually choose a time period you're going to write about. Look at the social, economic, and political situation at the beginning of the time period you're writing about. Look at the same issues at the end of the period and identify some significant groups and events during that time period that you've chosen. And that will get you started on the essay. In your book, there is a timeline on page 39. And it talks about historical context. Okay, and you can use the timeline to select certain events that you will talk about in your essay. Okay, so it's page 38 and 39 in your booklet. All right, hopefully that will get you started on the essay and get you thinking about what you're going to write about. Okay, thank you very much for listening, and feel free to email me at any time if you have questions about anything we've discussed today.